pretty alive. It's like, okay, welcome back to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. We are going to move back. We've been juggling for our first week or two, flood recovery and its impacts on housing and economic development, and just straightforward housing planning follow-up from our home bill, our S100 from last year. So it is wonderful to have so many Barre and Montpelier people here today. I, in many ways, wish you weren't here on this, having to come and testify, but we're going to pivot back to flood recovery and focus on primarily Montpelier and Barre to some extent, the flood recovery bill that has been introduced in the House. What's number is it? H?
The number of counting, we just.
Yeah. Oh, it's not yet introduced. Okay.
I never remembered to actually submit it after all the press,
Oh yeah, it's always useful to have it actually submitted. So to represent the work of that bill, which has been a huge group effort, we all appreciate it. Connor and Jonathan are welcome to come join us. I think are you doing this together?
Yeah, Connor, exactly. We've been hanging out a lot lately, so
we have a bit of an avid custodian routine.
But, well, I don't think we have one fall short. Anyway, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Introduce yourselves and go for the gusto.
So Connor Casey, I'm one of the two representatives from Montpelier, and Representative McCann is also here.
And Jonathan Williams, one of two representatives from Barre City. My better half, Representative Peter Anthony, is over there.
Great. It's wonderful to have you all here.
Thank you.
So fill us in on what will be, at least in part, coming our way and what your objectives are with this pretty comprehensive bill.
I mean, I don't think we need to, you've probably heard a lot of details about July and the aftermath of the flood. I think the reps for both cities, and certainly the senators from Washington County were on the ground quite a bit, made a point to canvass every home that had been impacted in the 2 weeks after. And I just trying to I'll speak for myself. I felt a bit useless after the flood, right? We didn't work for city government, we weren't in the administration. So it's like, what could we do? So I think all the reps just decided we're going to talk to as many people as possible, see what they need. And so when we do go into the legislative session, we have everything we need, and we've done our due diligence and homework. So we really tag teamed all of us just the last few weeks, meeting with every organization we could think of in Central Vermont who would be impacted. The planners, Friends of the Winooski, League of Cities and Towns. It's voluminous, the list. And then speaking to people, business owners who are still struggling to get off their feet. Individuals who were in limbo because, for one reason or another, they were still waiting on money for homes to be raised, bought out, demolished. So we thought, let's just put it all in one massive bill, which we know might not pass in its entirety, but at least the language is drafted, and then we have it ready to go and people ready to step up and hit that. So I can blab on here, Jonathan, but yeah. I don't know if you want to start going over the bill or.
No, that's a great introduction. Just a few caveats. One, this started as a Central Vermont effort, but given what occurred in December, again, there has been a lot of clamoring from our colleagues in the House saying, listen, this isn't going away. This is happening again and again. What's in this bill? How can we help? Because especially Southern Vermont got slammed in December.
Central Vermont was slammed.
And Central Vermont,
July as well. So
absolutely.
As a senator for many devastated towns,
yes,
you certainly are the poster children, but we're right behind you.
The whole state really has been impacted at one time or another this last year by the flooding, and so it's just demonstrative of the fact that this is going to happen again and again. And two, this bill represents. I mean, we received hundreds of wish list items from dozens of organizations, some of whom Connor just listed. But this really is the most critical items that we vetted and inserted into the bill. So we're happy to go over it now, if that's.
That would be-
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
that'd be
And I
great.
think, don't have the bill in front of us, but we know it pretty well at this point. It's, bigger than the Old Testament of the Bible, but, there's several buckets we try to hit on this,
The
and
price tag may be higher than the initial idea of the old.
we try to keep, fair play, Senator, fair play. So the first one, and we have plenty of backup with us today from Montpelier City Government.
So at that moment, that's a good moment, would you be kind enough to introduce the team you brought with you?
Oh, yeah. I don't know, do people just want to say their own names and,
Sure, Eric Nordenson from Police Department.
I'm Carrie Brown, I'm on the Montpelier City Council.
Lauren Harrell on the Montpelier City Council and the Flood Recovery Commission for town.
Right. And you,
Yeah, and I'm lobbying on behalf of Barry and Montpelier, which is a pleasure, and of course, wanting to get Barry close here too is a little more difficult, but here is there.
and every disaster needs some humor.
Hence
Maggie.
this afternoon, so.
Oh, okay, got it. So
So I think
give us some highlights. of
Yeah,
what
so
the-
I think what we'd like to cover is municipal relief, business aid, individuals who we felt fell through the cracks there, a mitigation plan going forward, and an emphasis on emergency preparedness, because honestly, the tragedy would be going through all these hardships and then not learning lessons and having it happen all over again, right?
Well, that sort of is what's already happened with Irene, and it happened again.
I didn't want to say it, Senator.
And housing, and well, for those of us who've been here a while,
Yep.
and housing.
Exactly.
I do have a bill in to look at our pre-disaster preparedness, evacuations, warnings. We're lucky we didn't lose more lives.
We are.
Absolutely, and we should admit we're plagiarists on this. Senator Cummings has an abatement bill. I believe we stole some language from as well. So we were real thieves in this omnibus bill.
Pirates, not these.
There you go. There you go.
Imitation, flattery, et cetera.
I think we will get that abatement bill. I'm hoping maybe this week.
It's a
And
beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So maybe starting with municipal government and
Can I speak to this part?
oh
Or do you
please,
wanna do it?
yeah,
And I assume you're coming to Senate GovOps as well to chat about this.
if we're invited.
If we're invited. So an eighth to a tenth of Berry City's municipal grand list was heavily damaged. More than 500 housing units. If you take it back of the envelope math, there's 2.2 people per household on average in Vermont. Berry City is 8,400 people. That is a significant impact to our grand list. As a result, Berry City is looking at a $1.45 million deficit on our revenue, and that is after severe austerity measures have already been implemented. The common example is they have already cut color copies from our budget in our municipal government. Montpelier is looking at a $1.5 million deficit. And so in this bill, because we didn't want to be accused of carve-outs, is $15 million for lost municipal revenues. And that's not just losses because of abatements. That is any sort of losses, because parking, for example, metered parking, et cetera. And so we would like a formula-driven approach for all impacted municipalities that are suffering from these kinds of impacts. If that amount is not remediated by the state, Berry City's property taxes will increase by 20%. No town in our state could deal with that. Stowe could not deal with that kind of hit. Berry City, whose median income is half that of our surrounding communities, definitely cannot. And so we strongly believe, to my mind, speaking for myself, that is the most critical element of this bill.
Yeah.
And may I just ask you a question on that revenue?
Please.
The municipal revenue, you're expected, it's a 25% match for FEMA. So you're talking about the 25% match in the 1.45 million and stuff that wasn't covered by FEMA, I assume.
Yes.
So it's that combination. So just for people to understand, so 25% match, which is so killing, and the additional stuff that was not covered by FEMA. And at some point, it would be great to know what wasn't covered and what's part of that.
Absolutely, and we can get you a
Yeah.
breakdown from our city government.
I think they are preparing memos, the city, just to
Yeah.
go into those.
VLCT should,
It's, no parking meter, no local option,
yeah,
you know, just a whole lot of small things that feed in, plus the loss to the grand list.
Yes.
And all the downtown buildings, because they weren't 50% damaged, they're not gonna get picked up in the abatement
Right.
bill.
And as many of you know, we had to rebuild central thoroughfares through our community, 302. And we did, they did a yeoman's job doing so in record time. I was astonished, but those are real costs to our communities.
yeah.
I sat in the Wednesday Montpelier City Council meeting, and you know, having served on that body for 5 years, it was a horror show. It's some of the stuff they're considering cutting here. We're talking about public safety, we're talking about firefighters, the senior center, the public transport, and you know, like we're still reeling from the storm. Some of these services we need more than ever, and you know, one thing Jonathan and I have been saying is natural disasters don't recognize community borders here. Somebody's paying for this in one way or another, and it seems unfair that, you know, local taxpayers, through no fault of their own, would be left with the bill on this for something so impactful. So, you know, there's some urgency in getting this money quickly. We sent a memo to House Appropriations, which we'd be happy to share with you, asking to consider this in budget adjustment to hopefully, you know, stave off some of that pain.
Further, in the bill, I think in terms of criticality, there is developed a successor to the BGAP program that we are tentatively calling FRAP, or the Flood Recovery Assistance Program. As many of you know, BGAP was instrumental to many businesses and nonprofits in the immediate aftermath of the flooding to pay for impacts, capital impacts, physical damage to their properties, and lost equipment. This funding is, to my one piece of feedback that I received from constituents is, that's great, that's wonderful, but we have a lot of other expenses that we need to cover that are, you know, there's a long tail to this thing. So this funding would be slightly more flexible in that it could cover lost revenues, wages, indirect and administrative costs, and inventory, which the initial program run through ACCD did not address. So how much is in there?
Yeah, so it's 40 million for the successor program. That's about half the bill, honestly. It's but if you were to talk to Melissa Bounty, the head of Central Vermont Economic Development, she would have numbers that show you over $300 million of economic damages to businesses in Central Vermont alone. These are businesses that are still reeling after the pandemic, just drowning in debt and being saddled with this afterwards. You'll also notice it's no secret, it's the new American businesses that are the last ones to get off the ground. We have Indian Nepali restaurant, Pho Thai opening this week, but well after the other restaurants, because they struggled with the process. We struggled to find translators. I was calling the chair of this committee to see if she could help us, and she certainly did connect people. So, you know, $300 billion of economic injury. We look at the folks who have been denied BGAP funding, including Good Samaritan Haven, who provides the homeless sheltering for Central Vermont here. They had refugees from the flood, and they were basically told by the agency, sorry, we're out of money here, you're on your own. So we'd really like to see some flexibility in this program, and the businesses really needed to get back off their feet. You know, we saw the stimulus packages after the pandemic. The economy of Central Vermont has slowed down to a standstill. You've seen it yourselves, the tumbleweeds rolling down Main Streets. It's
Two, there are monies in this.
I just want to acknowledge, because you can't see her, but you got a thumbs up from our chair.
she was.
On the language, on the, yeah.
I don't want to minimize it. She was down with trucks of supplies. We needed water one day. She came down with water. So we were very grateful. But like, you know, when you come from Central Vermont and you see your colleagues from other areas of the state reach out, what can we do? Like, tremendous amount of gratitude, even the first week of the session.
Senator Baruch was there at the library.
Oh, you're getting all sorts of reactions.
Yeah, many senators and other reps from all over the state were there at the library when we were organizing on the lawn. to send out crews to throw, trash into dumpsters and muck out basements, and it was very moving to see so many of you there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I get
Well, we
emotional.
appreciated your tour of when we came to Barry, you and Peter. That was terrific.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There are some monies in the bill for dam removal, as many of you heard or saw. The waters in Barry and Montpelier were different in that there was quite a bit more silt in Barry, and it made for some almost cement-like conditions in the mud, having to muck out. That stuff dried fast and was very heavy. Dam removal would help with some of the silt outflows. In central Vermont, there are some things in the bill that don't cost money. I'd like to just flag for you.
Let's hear those.
Sure. Disclosures to renters from landlords if they live in a flood zone and or if their property was flood impacted, and the same for persons purchasing homes. Requiring disclosures. Vermont is one of the few states, according to NCSL, that does not have those types
If
of
you get a
disclosures.
mortgage.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if you can pay cash, you are at risk, but
Sure.
every mortgage has to.
So I think we'll also be looking at that.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
One thing we really struggled with was the Department of Labor was continuing to require work search requirements for employees of businesses that had to suspend their operations as a result of the flood. So even though they would have had an opening date, it was beyond what was listed by the Department of Labor there. So Capital Grounds, the coffee shop in Montpelier, for example, I was talking to the owner the other day. She lost 70% of her workforce just because of this requirement. They had to go out and look for other jobs. Other jobs were available. They had to take them, right? So that's a big one. Another one that does cost money. Sorry, Jonathan. Go back
I
to
was
that.
trying to sell it.
I think on the human level, the most tragic thing that I've encountered anyways is people still living in limbo because they need money to raise their homes over that line there to get the FEMA reimbursement. Some are looking for buyouts, but there's a lot of people, 18 units in Montpelier, where folks are like, look, this, you're looking to expand housing statewide? How about saving my house, and it'll be cheaper to do that. So Elm Street, Lower State Street in Montpelier, we have a ton of folks who are just begging for support. And that's the other item we asked, please, for some consideration of budget adjustment, just so these folks can get on with their lives,
Yes, because buyouts will take forever. We just finished a buyout in Ludlow for my read.
It takes forever. It takes forever. So, but
They have nowhere to go. They're living in houses with no electricity and no heat.
Yeah,
I kept trying to find ARPA funds left over all fall. I asked for 10 million from the Chair of Appropriations, and she gave me the evil eye. So, good luck with presenting this. But they're living in terrible conditions. There's nowhere for them to go. There's kids in the school. You don't want to take your kid out in his senior year in high school and move him.
We had a very articulate witness from Moortown who was choosing to continue to live in substandard housing because there's no place to go.
Substandard landlord.
And a substandard landlord.
You don't have the option of leaving.
Sure.
I was talking to a fella, what's his name, his developmental disabilities, and for a long period of time, the bottom floor of his apartment was wet, like the carpet was wet, and he was sleeping upstairs the whole time, So it was just an example. We need a bit more from our state here. We didn't know what to do as far as health and safety in the flood. People were just helping out neighbors. Like you didn't think to put on that mask before you went to the basements. So again, we just want to make sure, this happens again. We'd like to see a bit more state presence on the ground. Reverse emergency 911 is a component of the bill, and we thought that was a big tragedy. We were using whatever data we could find to call people to make sure they were safe and everything. But you saw the cars underwater. That was needless. That didn't need to happen. And we can come up with a system that prevents that from
They
happening
do it
again.
on the coast.
They
I got
do
a
it
call
on the
from
coast,
the
yeah.
police department, says there's a tropical storm coming. We'll tell you if you need to evacuate.
Exactly.
Didn't leave me watching the ocean come closer and closer.
No, the night of the flood, I received calls from legislators who told me, my parents live in Barry. Are they supposed to be evacuating right now? They say there's fighting in the streets. Their cars are partially underwater. What do we do? And so I had to track them down, call the police. It was a nightmare.
And well, you had a shelter.
We
In
did,
'92, Montpelier had 2 shelters.
yeah.
No school evacuation plan. Now the kids go to National Life, but there's no other shelter in the city.
Well, that is in this bill,
Yes.
shelter identification. As well, there is monies solicited for, there are these long-term recovery groups that are being set up around Vermont. You may have heard about them, according to FEMA playbooks. However, there are no state or federal financial support for these organizations that are doing case management for persons impacted by the flooding, as well as a number of other services. Berry Up is one such example in Berry, the Hope Coalition
The
in Central
hub
Vermont.
in Woodstock.
The hub in Woodstock. Right now, Berry Up is subsisting solely on a grant from the Vermont Community Foundation. And while that is extremely generous, I am quite surprised that there have been no other state supports
Right.
of any kind, money or otherwise, for these organizations.
Well, actually, the Vermont Community Foundation has been incredibly
Oh.
generous with every one of them.
Extremely,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, there is support because we are all supporting these people financially and
Sure.
and the case managers, but you're right, the case managers are mostly volunteers.
Yeah, yeah, I was referring, forgive me, to state monies and support, or the use of software that the state might have available, database tools, et cetera. And then, so those
And
are,
the rental registry, which is also in our bill.
oh, yes, well, I
Feel
mean,
free
I'm
to
happy to
speak to
speak to that at another time or now, but the rental registry in Barry literally saved lives.
Wow.
It helped more than 60% of Berry City rents rather than owns their homes. In the immediate aftermath of the flooding, our municipal registry was used extensively to track down displaced persons. And I strongly believe that it was critical in our recovery efforts, and hence I have resubmitted, and I'm told this extends far beyond my brief history here, but the rental registry bill. But I'm happy to talk to that at another time.
We have mapping in there. We have positions for each of the regional planning commissions. Really, one thing we saw is we want to strengthen the tie between the state and communities as far as authoring these emergency management plans. Barry and Montpelier are probably in better shape than most on that one. But if you look at these smaller towns around there, they've got like nobody on staff there. They just need more help.
Yeah.
So we've got that in the budget as well.
I've got in one of my bills, and thought, we really need to pay the emergency management directors while they're functioning during a crisis, that they have to leave their jobs.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how well we train them.
Well, we
Yeah.
heard about this in GovOps. They do offer training, it's not required.
Yeah,
Every town has an emergency manager. They're very mixed bag though, just
Yeah.
like other things that we require. But training is not required. And as we all know, once a flood is done and it begins to be in the rearview mirror, we do not stay on top of all this every year annually. I mean, look, we learned a ton of lessons in Irene. We
Well,
went through so much of the same thing and.
we are looking at our possible 3rd flood tonight.
Yes.
So it's gonna be pretty hard to just say,
Yeah.
once and done.
No, absolutely. But it is, what I'm thinking of as you're talking about this for Barry Montpelier, I'm thinking of Paco and Paco's regional work on this and how it was pulling teeth
Uh-huh.
to make it a regional thing. And we now, with our river corridors, we must look regionally. It is not a town by town solution. It's a river corridor solution in many cases. And so we've been, we happily that A&R work of doing the river corridor mapping is done. And before you came, we got the regional planners presentation from their report, which you should obviously take a
excellent.
peek at, which is great. But it's gonna take time.
I know you are all concerned about how do we pay for all of this. We are concerned about that as well. It has been my experience.
Total is 85 million, is that right?
85.6 million. Critically, again, I would reiterate that, especially the municipal revenues piece, that the timing of that is necessary due to the looming deadline of town meeting, and having to vote on budgets, municipal budgets.
Are you asking for that 15 million from the BAA?
That is our preference.
So that's what you've proposed?
Yes.
Okay, great.
The 10 million to raise the homes and the 15 million for the for the municipal budgets?
Yes. It has been my professional experience in working with state government that, sometimes you have to nudge politely state government as to where there are pockets of federal monies available. I would strongly urge any of the money committees, including my own, small money, to look at those qualifying funds that, are resulting from how heavily damaged our communities were by the flood. So I, as a person who raises money for a living, I always say, the money's out there, you just have to know where to look.
We think these are smart investments. It's, by investing in the businesses in our central Vermont, you're rejuvenating the economy. And as far as the mitigation goes, I don't think we can afford not to invest in it. It's, I don't want to get too dark here, but I was meeting with a group of business owners yesterday. And they said, we're not doing it again. Like if this happens on this level again, we're not doing it. We're not opening up again. So for us, it's like a matter of our existence in many ways that there will not be, a downtown Montpelier like the one you walk through. If a flood like this happens again, we'll still be a city, of course, but you will not have a downtown.
Yeah.
We don't even have a post office.
True enough.
Well, after yesterday's demonstration, I'm sure.
We still will not. have a post office.
Well done you on that yesterday. Thank you for this. Any questions we look forward to it coming out. I think pieces of it, our chair can send us a message from the beyond here, but I believe many pieces of this we will be taking up also in our home bill.
Thank
Home
you.
bill 2, be home.
We can't thank you enough. We
Thank you so
really
much.
appreciate the time. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your work pulling this all together.
I'll tell you, Senate delegation is going to put in a resolution so we can do it joint.
Oh, excellent.
That would be great.
Asking the general of the postal service, that we would like I think we just need to be as annoying as possible.
Absolutely.
Asking for his
I'm sure
resignation.
we get a lot of letters because he's not getting enough.
No, yeah.
So,
Our line has doubled in the very post office.
Put poor
because-
chief here, like there's black market stamps going around, it's.
So actually, that's
Still, in downtown Barry, it took me 20 minutes to get through the one block of
wait.
downtown.
It's a wait. Yeah.
So before we end together, I would just love to open it up to any of our wonderful guests who went through this together. If there's anything you want to add. Peter?
I'll just speak for mitigation and resilience. I think once the disaster of structural removal is done with, it'll take a while, of those buildings that are condemned or abandoned, then there's an opportunity, at least in Barry, as I'm familiar with, to utilize the wisdom of the corridor studies and say what areas can we not repopulate or restructure, and essentially give the river some more breathing room, so to say, or flowage capacity.
We're going to call it the
That'll-
Anthony floodplain.
There you go.
Right by your house.
I'm happy to give you a half an acre, because I think that's important for the next one.
That's wonderful. I was going to ask about that,
Yeah.
if you've looked at.
Because FEMA will only deal with structures. And
Right,
then there's, well, if
exactly.
you want to rebuild, if you like, or rebreathe the river, that's state money.
Right,
Absolutely.
so important.
And Laurel, you have something you want to add?
Sure, yeah, so
Just introduce yourself.
Lauren Hurl, with my city council for Montpelier role mostly today. Yeah, I mean, this is my 5th year on city council, and so, just coming out of the pandemic, which was of course devastating to communities too, and we were already dealing with, backlog projects and just so much harm and hurt in the community, and then to have this come. And now, I mean, this city budget is like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, cuts across the board, every department, services that were absolutely critical during the flood that now we're paring back. I mean, even little things like we had this youth conservation corps that were like, who were out mucking out basements. We have zeroed that out. It's like, you just go through and it's just devastating. And it's like the exact wrong thing we should be doing at this moment when our community needs it more than ever. And so we just desperately need the help and support, and then like, across the board, like you look at the individuals who need the support for, with the substantially damaged buildings, the businesses need it. And yeah, just echoing like every single one I've talked to, every business owner is like, I cannot do this again financially, emotionally. And so if we do not show up to support them, it's just imagining a hollowed out, capital city and Barry. I mean, it's just all of this. Just appreciate your time and attention to it. And I know you're taking it really seriously and happy to be, a resource anytime that can be helpful.
I'm Kate McCann. I would just add on the emergency preparedness. I think what we got in Front Porch Forum was that there was, space at the very odd, but if you can't get to the very odd, that's not a space.
Right.
And in this case, we couldn't get there. Montpelier couldn't get there. So that's not where we should be sending people. Also, I think the timing of it all, using Front Porch Forum or Facebook to try to get information out there doesn't seem safe. I had flown to New York City that morning for medical procedure stuff. And in the meantime, my 13-year-old was home alone. My friend was gonna go there to stay with her. She was gonna go at 7 o'clock at night that night. She decided to go a little bit earlier. She crossed that bridge by Montpelier High School 20 minutes before the water came over the top. Like, she should have known. We should have been spreading that word that these bridges are gonna go, and they're gonna go, and, we see this happening in the next 45 minutes or whatever. Like, we have to have a better way of spreading the information than Front Porch Forum and Facebook.
And with reverse 911, that is possible.
Yes.
And even with the water main breaks, like that's, sometimes we get a
I
water
really-
at our home, sometimes we don't, sometimes it's a Front Porch Forum. How do you know when it's time to boil the water? Like, come on.
Well, I've been drinking it for 10 hours, so why bother?
Right.
Well, and also just people listening to the news and knowing, I mean, all of us knew a huge storm event was coming. I mean, it's like taking that on board and actually and planning for it. I mean,
Right, that's what we don't have. We
Yeah.
don't know what we should do. We don't know if we're gonna be told to evacuate. We don't know where we're going when we evacuate. I mean, the email the city sent out when the wave of water was supposed, you might wanna go to your second story. I mean, because we didn't have any other place to send you. We really need, as a state, to have better coordinated.
On
and-
both sides of Route 2.
Yes.
Absolutely. Chief?
Yeah, Eric Norton from the police department. To some clarity, we sent out a lot using BT alerts, so I would advocate using BT alerts and having registered to BT alerts. There was certainly some challenges getting to the facility in Mary, but there was access, and we're providing people access there. It was quite the roundabout way to get there. And then, yeah, the communication piece is a huge piece for, I think, every community, and how do you best get to most people as quickly as possible in a rapidly evolving situation. Just sitting in that room, every hour things changed, and at 3 a.m. there was a tornado watch. Who was going to prepare for that too, right? So that, and then for us, I think as police, fire, and EMS, our communication infrastructure is very fragile, and the push for that has been substantial in the Senate and the House. And I know that it's been slowed down again with the task force that's in place, but we lost 4 of our 5 towers. What does that mean? Like for Montpelier and Barry, we were okay. We relocated Mary's to Montpelier and we maintained our communication. But those smaller communities were really vulnerable. And those are the people that have the least amount of resources to respond to those emergencies. And we just, quite frankly, couldn't communicate with them. So if there's any chance to get that infrastructure built and started to work, it will really help those smaller communities.
Yeah.
No, thank you for bringing that up, because Rescue Inc. is in my district, so I was speaking with them after the floods, and there were agencies, Swift Water Rescue folks who came up from other states, and they ended up relying on their cell phones to communicate because our radio system is inadequate. So that is an obvious must do. I mean, we have to be able to communicate on our official radios and not rely on that. And then just one thing I want to mention about communication, what we used to do in a state down south that has a lot of hurricanes was at the beginning of the season, we would let folks know about what things to think about when they were not in that position of panic. So we talk about when you have debris, separate the debris, because it makes a big difference in the cost at the end if you separate the hazardous stuff from the just, regular debris. Think about residents who live near you who live alone. So make contact with them in advance of the storm. Think about pets. Think about having a hurricane buddy because you know that your spouse is going to be at work. Think about how you'll protect your home so that you can go be part of the storm. Think about like one problem is our emergency managers are often the only person that certain agencies will give the information to, like the federal, the people who do the dams, the federal dams, they will only give information to the emergency managers of the towns, like not even to the sheriff. So think about that now and have a backup. So there's just so much that we need to do ahead of time. And it might make sense to have something ready for town meeting. I know that's soon, but just have some sort of state guide, just a basic guide, sign up for BT Alert, ready for town meeting, because this is going to be in people's minds all over the state. We could have a consolidated or a standard format, and I have started talking with folks about that. But communication beforehand is just so important before things get crazy. Like think about your insurance.
If you want that for town meeting, we had the Vermont Emergency Management. I think Eric would be very open to thinking about that, but I think we need to start moving on that.
We do, yeah, and I've talked with the administration actually to just see if anything's happening.
Well,
But I just started that last week, so.
and just to add on top of that, there are, to quote Don Rumsfeld, known knowns, and then there are known unknowns, and highlighting the landslides that occurred in my community, I think is critical. At one time, there were over 25 active landslides in Berry City alone, for 4 square miles. So folks who even were quite certain, myself included, that we were out of the floodplain. The house at the end of my street has been condemned and the power has been cut because what is normally a tiny stream in a gully, there was so much force behind that water that it was running beneath their foundation. That person has nowhere to go and they have been denied FEMA assistance.
Wow.
So, we have to be prepared not only to prepare folks, but also to respond to what seems a very unlikely scenario.
Definitely.
Truthfully.
Yeah, well, the
Thank you for your
landslides took them all, took everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Vermont Emergency Management only has 3 landslide people. I think that's from the testimony last
Yeah.
week.
And
Yeah.
And it's clear that when our land gets so waterlogged, I mean, this was the issue in Ludlow too. We had a huge landslide right off of Okemo. And, it's no one's prepared for that. They're prepared for the river.
I was watching my backyard. I'm
Yeah.
way above the floodplain, but we've had mud come, well, it's white sand lava that comes out, but it
Mm.
it's come all the way to the house. So,
Right.
St. John's right too, in this last round.
Yeah, there were tons of them. I mean,
Yeah.
just
the
astonished
clay
us
just
all.
doesn't absorb it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you.
This is
Thank
great
you.
and
Appreciate it.
Means a lot, thank you.
thank you all so much.
Okay. And I'll have Michael be in touch with you if you want
Perfect.
to do that. I just gotta find time.
this is the stormwater.
We've got the chair of the Irish Senate coming in at 8:30 tomorrow, if anybody can make it.
That's why.
The chair of the Irish Senate's coming into this committee, 8:30 tomorrow.
Thank
I don't
you.
have them on the schedule.
Uh,
We don't meet till 9.
I think I sent an email,
Yeah,